The arrival of the underdog. The Galactic Training Academy was the pride of the universe, a place where the best and brightest from countless planets came to prove themselves. Its towering silver spires gleamed against the backdrop of stars, a symbol of strength and unity, or so it claimed. But for Jake Carter, the academy wasn't a symbol of hope. It was a challenge, one he intended to conquer. Jake stepped off the transport shuttle onto the academy's massive docking bay. Around him, aliens of every imaginable shape and size were bustling with energy. Towering creatures with glowing eyes, sleek beings with shimmering skin, and mechanical hybrids all marched toward the registration area. Jake, with his plain human appearance and average height, looked like he didn't belong. Whispers started almost immediately. Is that the human? Why is he here? Don't they know humans are too weak for this? This will be fun to watch. Jake ignored the murmurs, though his clenched fists betrayed his frustration. He had been warned this would happen. Humans were considered a primitive species, barely capable of surviving on their own planet, let alone excelling in intergalactic training. But Jake wasn't here to argue. He was here to prove them wrong. As Jake approached the main hall, a large shadow loomed over him. He looked up to see Zorak, a member of the Dranok species. The Dranoks were known for their superior strength and intimidating presence, and Zorak was a prime example. With his sharp black scales, glowing red eyes, and a permanent smirk, he exuded arrogance. Well, what do we have here? Zorak sneered, blocking Jake's path. A human? Did someone lose a bet and decide to let you in? The other cadets laughed. Jake stayed calm, his face expressionless. I'm here because I earned it, Jake said simply, stepping around Zorak. But Zorak wasn't done. He placed a massive clawed hand on Jake's shoulder, stopping him. Listen, little human. You're nothing here. Do yourself a favor and quit now. It'll save you the embarrassment later. Jake turned slowly, looking directly into Zorak's fiery eyes. Thanks for the advice. I'll keep that in mind. The calmness in Jake's voice seemed to irritate Zorak, but before he could say more, a loud voice echoed through the hall. Cadets, report to the briefing room immediately. The commotion died down as everyone hurried toward the large doors at the end of the hall. Zorak gave Jake one last glare before storming off with his entourage. The briefing room was enormous, filled with holographic displays of distant planets and star systems. The Academy's instructor, a tall, silver-haired figure named Commander Threx, stood at the center. His piercing gaze swept over the cadets. Welcome to the Galactic Training Academy. Commander Threx began, his voice commanding respect. You are here because you represent the best your species have to offer, or so your sponsors claim. This academy does not care about your background, your planet, or your reputation. Only one thing matters here: results. Jake stood among the cadets, his expression unreadable. He could feel the weight of the stares around him. It wasn't just Zorak who thought he didn't belong. The entire room seemed to share the sentiment. Commander Threx continued, Your first assessment begins now. This will determine your initial ranking in the academy. Those who fail will be sent home immediately. This is not a place for the weak. The room buzzed with nervous energy, but Jake remained steady. He had prepared for this moment for years, enduring grueling physical and mental training on Earth. The fact that no human had ever been admitted before didn't matter to him. He was here now, and he was ready. Threx raised a hand, and a hologram of a maze-like structure appeared above him. Your task is simple. Navigate this simulation, reach the core, and retrieve the energy module. You will be graded on speed, strategy, and survival. The simulation adapts to your actions, so do not assume it will be easy. The cadets were divided into groups of 10 and led to individual simulation chambers. Jake found himself in the same group as Zorak, who smirked as they entered the chamber. Looks like you'll be out of here before dinner, human, Zorak mocked. Jake ignored him, focusing on the task ahead. The chamber lit up, and the simulation began. The maze materialized around them. its metallic walls shimmering with an otherworldly glow. As the cadets sprinted into the maze, Jake quickly noticed the differences in their approaches. The larger, stronger aliens like Zorak bulldozed through obstacles, relying on brute force. Others used advanced tech, scanning the maze for shortcuts. Jake, however, relied on observation and quick thinking. When a trapdoor suddenly opened beneath him, Jake reacted instantly, grabbing the edge and pulling himself up before it could close. Moments later, he heard a loud crash and turned to see Zorak smashing through a barrier that had blocked his path. "Having fun, human?" Zorak called, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Jake didn't respond, but his mind was racing. He realized the maze wasn't just testing physical ability. It was studying their decisions. Every trap seemed designed to exploit overconfidence or hesitation. Near the halfway point, Jake encountered a shimmering force field blocking his path. Other cadets had already turned back, unable to bypass it. Jake, however, noticed a small control panel hidden nearby. "Let's see if Earth tech is as useless as they think," he muttered to himself, pulling a compact multi-tool from his belt. Within seconds, he had rewired the panel, and the force field dissipated. As Jake moved forward, he heard footsteps behind him. Zorak had caught up. "Impressive," Zorak admitted grudgingly, though his tone was still mocking. "But luck only gets you so far." Before Jake could respond, the maze shifted. Walls moved, creating new paths while sealing off others. The simulation was getting more challenging. By the end of the session, Jake had reached the core alongside only a few cadets. Zorak was among them, his smug expression intact. As they returned to the briefing room, Commander Threx reviewed their performance. "Well done to those who reached the core. The rest of you, pack your belongings. You're going home." Jake's name appeared on the leaderboard, not at the top, but higher than most had expected. Zorak, however, was still ranked above him. As the cadets dispersed, Zorak approached Jake, leaning in close. "You got lucky today, human. But this is just the beginning. You won't last long." Jake met his gaze without flinching. "We'll see." And with that, Jake walked away, leaving Zorak fuming. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready for whatever came next. After all, he wasn't just here to survive. He was here to win. The challenge begins. The Galactic Training Academy buzzed with anticipation as the cadets gathered in the simulation arena for their first official challenge. Towering walls of sleek metal shimmered under artificial lights, and holographic projectors hummed quietly, ready to generate the unpredictable terrain. Jake stood among the group, his calm demeanor masking the tension he felt inside. Commander Threx's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "Today's challenge will test your survival skills, strategic thinking, and adaptability. You will be placed in a hostile environment simulation. Your objective: secure the relic at the center of the arena and bring it back to this point. Beware, the environment will evolve as you progress. Only the strongest will succeed." Jake's eyes scanned the competition. Zorak, standing tall and smug, smirked as he caught Jake looking. Around him, the other cadets were whispering strategies, activating advanced tech, and preparing themselves mentally. Jake had no high-tech gadgets, no team to rely on. It was just him and his wits. "Ready yourselves," Threx commanded. The arena floor beneath them began to glow, and the cadets were teleported into the simulation. Jake landed in a dense alien jungle. The air was thick with fog, and strange glowing plants pulsed faintly, casting an eerie light. Alien creatures scuttled through the underbrush, their eyes glinting like tiny stars. Jake crouched low, listening carefully. Somewhere in the distance, a loud crash echoed, followed by a familiar booming laugh. Jake shook his head. Zorak was already making his presence known. "He's probably smashing his way to the relic," Jake muttered to himself. "That's one way to do it. Not mine, though." Jake moved quietly, relying on his sharp observation skills. He noticed patterns in the terrain. The glowing plants pulsed faster near certain paths, indicating danger zones. He avoided those and instead used natural cover to move undetected. Meanwhile, Zorak wasn't wasting time. The Drenok tore through obstacles with brute force, smashing trees and crushing creatures underfoot. He had attracted a small following of cadets who hoped to ride on his coattails, but Zorak had no intention of sharing the glory. "Stay out of my way, or I'll throw you to the predators," Zorak growled at a smaller cadet who had gotten too close. In contrast, Jake's journey was quieter, but no less dangerous. As he scaled a rocky incline, he heard a faint buzzing sound. Turning quickly, he spotted a swarm of mechanical drones sweeping through the jungle. Their red scanning lights darted across the terrain, searching for cadets to eliminate. Jake froze, pressing himself against the rock. The drones passed by, missing him entirely. Jake let out a slow breath, his heart pounding. "Good thing they rely on heat signatures," he muttered, adjusting the thermal dampener sewn into his suit. One of the few pieces of tech he had brought from Earth had just saved his life. Further into the simulation, Jake encountered his first real obstacle, a wide chasm with no visible bridge. He crouched at the edge, studying the terrain. On the other side, he could see a faint glow. The relic's location wasn't far now. He scanned the area and noticed something strange. Vines hanging from the ceiling moved unnaturally, as if they were alive. Jake tested his theory by throwing a small rock at one of the vines. Instantly, it snapped forward, crushing the rock with bone-breaking force. "Great," Jake sighed. "Killer vines." Of course. Jake studied the movement patterns carefully, timing each snap. With a deep breath, he leaped to the first stable platform. The vines reacted, but Jake was already moving, jumping from one platform to the next with precision. Elsewhere, Zorak wasn't having such an easy time. His brute force tactics had drawn the attention of the mechanical drones, and now he was fighting them off with his bare claws. "Is this all you've got?" Zorak roared, smashing a drone into pieces. But for every drone he destroyed, two more appeared. One of the cadets following him whispered nervously, "Maybe we should go back." Zorak turned on them, his red eyes blazing. "Cowards. Stay behind if you want, but I'm getting that relic." As Jake approached the relic's location, he noticed something odd. The terrain had gone eerily silent. No rustling leaves, no buzzing drones, just an oppressive stillness. "That's not a good sign," he muttered. The relic, a glowing orb floating on a pedestal, was within reach. But Jake wasn't about to rush in. He circled the area, looking for traps. Sure enough, he spotted faint lines in the ground. Pressure sensors. Using a long branch, Jake carefully triggered one of the sensors from a safe distance. A burst of energy shot out, scorching the ground where he would have stood. "Nice try," Jake said, smirking. He navigated the trap-laden area carefully and finally reached the relic. As soon as he grabbed it, the simulation roared to life. The jungle began to collapse, and a countdown appeared in the sky. 10 minutes to return to base. Jake sprinted through the crumbling terrain, dodging falling debris and killer vines. He could hear other cadets shouting in the distance, some fighting off drones, others trying to find their way back. As he neared the exit, Jake spotted Zorak ahead, his massive frame tearing through the jungle. Zorak turned and saw Jake holding the relic. "You," Zorak bellowed. "That's mine." Jake didn't slow down. "If you want it, come and get it," he called back, adrenaline pumping. Zorak charged after him, but the collapsing terrain didn't favor his size. Jake's agility allowed him to outmaneuver the larger alien, narrowly escaping traps and falling debris. In the final moments, Jake dove through the exit portal, landing in the arena just as the countdown hit 0. The cadets returned to the briefing room, battered but alive. Commander Threx stood at the front, his expression unreadable. "Well done to those who returned with the relic. Your rankings have been updated." Jake glanced at the leaderboard. He wasn't at the top, But he wasn't at the bottom either. Zorak, fuming, was just above him. As the room emptied, Zorak approached Jake, his fiery eyes narrowed. "You think this is over, human? I'm just getting started." Jake met his glare, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Good. So am I." The challenge had only just begun. The tables start to turn. The buzz in the academy grew louder after the first challenge. The cadets whispered about Jake, the human underdog who had managed to hold his own against Zorak and the others. While some admired his skill, others thought it was a fluke. Jake ignored it all, choosing to focus on the next task. In the training halls, holographic drones zipped through the air as cadets practiced combat techniques. Jake watched from a distance, studying how the aliens fought. Their styles were varied: brutal strikes, advanced tech, energy shields, but most relied on overwhelming strength or superior technology. Jake, however, was used to doing more with less. "Not bad for a human," came a voice behind him. Jake turned to see Lyra, a tall, silver-skinned alien with glowing blue eyes. She was part of the Siluri species, known for their agility and sharp minds. Unlike most cadets, Lyra didn't look at Jake with disdain or amusement, just curiosity. "You held your own against Zorak," she said, crossing her arms. "Not many can say that." Jake shrugged. "I got lucky." "Maybe," Lyra said, tilting her head. "Or maybe you're smarter than you look. I saw what you did with the force field and the pressure sensors. That wasn't luck." Jake smiled faintly. "What can I say? Humans adapt." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You might need that adaptability." The next challenge is rumored to be unpredictable. The next morning, the cadets assembled in the simulation arena again. Commander Threx stood before them, his gaze sharp. "Today's task is simple," he began. "You will face a series of individual trials designed to test your resourcefulness and decision-making. You'll be graded on how well you adapt to the challenges. But beware, this simulation learns from you." Jake's eyes narrowed. A simulation that learned. This wasn't going to be easy. The cadets were called one by one into isolated chambers, their progress displayed on a large screen for everyone to watch. Zorak went early, bulldozing through obstacles with brute force. The crowd cheered as he tore apart a mechanical guardian with his bare hands. When it was Jake's turn, the room quieted. Some watched out of curiosity, others waiting for him to fail. Jake stepped into the chamber, and the simulation began. The first challenge was a familiar one, a maze. But this time, the walls were transparent and constantly shifting. As Jake moved, the walls changed, forcing him to adapt quickly. He stopped for a moment, analyzing the pattern. "Okay," he muttered, "it's responding to movement. Let's see if I can outthink it." Jake moved deliberately, taking unexpected turns and pausing in irregular intervals. The maze struggled to adjust, and he reached the exit faster than expected. The screen outside flashed his time, and the cadets murmured in surprise. Zorak, leaning against the wall, scowled. The second challenge was more dangerous. Jake found himself in a room with 3 glowing orbs, each hovering above a pedestal. A holographic voice instructed him to choose the correct one, or face the consequences. Jake examined the orbs. They were identical in appearance, but something felt off. He noticed faint energy fluctuations coming from 2 of the pedestals, while the third remained steady. "Trap," he muttered. Taking a deep breath, Jake reached for the steady orb. The room trembled, but nothing happened. He had chosen correctly. The final challenge was the most difficult. Jake stood on a narrow bridge, a massive alien predator blocking his path. The creature had glowing eyes, razor-sharp claws, and a body covered in shimmering scales. It roared, the sound reverberating through the chamber. Jake had no weapons, no tools, just his wits. He crouched low, watching the creature's movements. It paced back and forth, its glowing eyes fixed on him. "Let's see how smart you are," Jake whispered. He grabbed a loose piece of metal from the bridge and threw it to the side. The creature lunged toward the sound, giving Jake an opening. He darted past it, his heart pounding as the beast snapped its jaws inches from his back. He reached the other side, just as the simulation ended. When Jake exited the chamber, the leaderboard updated. His name climbed higher, now directly beneath Zorak's. The room buzzed with chatter as cadets discussed his performance. Zorak stormed over, his red eyes blazing. "You think you're clever, human. You're nothing but a fluke." Jake met his glare calmly. "If I'm a fluke, why are you so worried?" Zorak growled, but before he could respond, Lyra stepped in. "Leave him alone, Zorak. You've had your fun. Maybe it's time you focused on your own performance instead of picking fights." The tension hung thick in the air before Zorak finally turned and walked away. Lyra looked at Jake and smirked. "You really know how to get under his skin, don't you?" Jake shrugged. "It's not hard. Just show him he's not invincible." Later that night, Jake and Lyra sat together in the Academy's mess hall. "You're good," Lyra said, breaking the silence. "Better than most of us expected." Jake glanced at her. "And you're not afraid to say it." "Why?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated. Zorak's been running this place like he owns it. Someone needs to knock him down a peg. Maybe it's you." Jake smirked. Maybe. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The real fight was yet to come, and he was ready for it. Breaking point. The Academy was abuzz with tension as the next challenge loomed. Whispers of alliances and rivalries spread like wildfire among the cadets. Jake, however, remained focused. He spent his time studying the holographic displays in the training hall, mapping out potential strategies. Lyra, who had grown into a quiet ally, approached him. "You do realize this next challenge is team-based, right?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Team-based? Didn't see that coming." "Neither did most of us," Lyra replied. "But it changes everything. Stronger cadets like Zorak will dominate unless we figure out how to balance the teams." Jake sighed. He'd been preparing for solo survival, not relying on others. Trusting a team in a cutthroat environment wasn't exactly comforting. The following day, the cadets gathered in the simulation arena, their faces a mix of determination and nervousness. Commander Threx stood before them, his commanding presence silencing the chatter. "Today's challenge," Threx began, "will test your ability to lead, collaborate, and adapt. You will be divided into teams of 4 and placed in a hostile simulation. Your goal: retrieve the energy core from the central tower and return it to your extraction point. Beware, other teams will be competing for the same objective." A holographic display divided the cadets into teams. Jake's heart sank as he saw the names: Zorak, Lyra, Raxar, and himself. Lyra glanced at him, her expression cautious. "Well, this should be interesting." Jake muttered under his breath. "Interesting is one word for it." Zorak smirked, baring sharp teeth. "Looks like I'll have to carry the team, as usual." The simulation began, and the team found themselves in a sprawling, abandoned cityscape. Crumbling buildings towered above them, and the air was thick with fog. The energy core's location glowed faintly on their wrist displays, marking their target. "We need a plan," Lyra said, her voice firm. Zorak snorted. "The plan is simple. Follow me, stay out of my way, and let me handle the heavy lifting." "That's a terrible plan," Jake said flatly. Zorak spun to face him, his red eyes narrowing. "What did you say, human?" Jake didn't flinch. "Charging in blind will get us eliminated. We need to split up. 2 of us scout the tower for traps, while the other 2 provide cover and watch for rival teams." Before Zorak could argue, Lyra stepped in. "Jake's right. Charging in will make us easy targets. We need to be smarter than that." Zorak growled but didn't protest further. The team moved cautiously through the ruins, with Jake and Lyra scouting ahead while Zorak and Raxar, a silent but powerful reptilian cadet, guarded the rear. As they neared the tower, Jake noticed something strange. faint scorch marks on the ground and walls. This area's been hit before. We're not the first ones here. Lyra nodded, scanning the environment. Then we'll have to assume rival teams are already inside. Inside the tower, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. The energy core's glow pulsed faintly from the top floor, but the winding stairs were littered with traps. Jake and Lyra carefully disarmed pressure plates and motion sensors, while Zorak grumbled impatiently. "You two take forever," Zorak muttered. "You want to trigger a plasma burst. Be my guest," Jake replied, not looking back. Zorak growled but stayed quiet. On the final stretch, the team encountered their first rival group. A group of heavily armed cadets blocked the entrance to the core chamber, their weapons trained on Jake's team. "We've got this," Zorak said, stepping forward. "Stay behind me." The turning tide. The atmosphere at the academy was colder than ever. The fallout from the last challenge had left alliances fractured and tensions high. Jake's squad barely spoke to one another, and the betrayal by Krenix was still fresh in his mind. Jake sat in the corner of the training hall, running simulations on his wrist device. The soft glow reflected on his face as he replayed footage of the last mission, analyzing every move, every misstep. "You're obsessing again," Lyra said, sitting down beside him. Jake didn't look up. "If I don't learn from it, I'll repeat it." Lyra smirked faintly. "You're better than you think, Jake. Don't let one bad mission mess with your head." "It's not just one mission," Jake muttered. "It's the whole system here. The sabotage, the backstabbing. It's like they're rewarding the worst parts of us." Lyra leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe they are, or maybe they're testing if we'll rise above it." Before Jake could respond, the overhead speakers crackled to life. "Cadets, report to the main arena for your next challenge." Commander Threx's voice boomed. The cadets filed into the massive arena, the air buzzing with nervous energy. At the center stood Commander Threx, flanked by holographic displays showing the Academy's insignia. "This is your penultimate challenge," Threx announced. "It will test not just your skill, but your ability to anticipate, strategize, and lead. The rules are simple. Survive." The arena shifted as the simulation began, transforming into a dense alien jungle. Towering trees loomed overhead, their glowing leaves casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. Strange noises echoed through the air, and the faint hum of machinery hinted at hidden dangers. Jake's wrist device displayed a single objective: locate and secure the beacon. Lyra, Raxar, and Krenix appeared beside him as the simulation initiated. Jake's jaw tightened at the sight of Krenix, but he kept his focus on the mission. "We stick together," Jake said, his voice firm. "No running off. No deals. We're finishing this as a team, whether we like it or not." Krenix hesitated, but nodded. "Understood." The jungle was alive with challenges. Traps disguised as vines snapped at their feet, and swarms of mechanical drones patrolled the skies. Jake led the way, carefully navigating through the obstacles while keeping the team moving. As they approached the beacon's signal, a new complication arose. Another squad had set up camp nearby, their defensive perimeter bristling with automated turrets. "It's Zorak's team," Lyra whispered, peering through the underbrush. Jake's eyes narrowed. "Of course it is." Raxar growled low. "We could take them. Hit hard and fast." Jake shook his head. "No, we'd lose too much in the fight. We need to outthink them." While Zorak's team guarded the beacon, Jake led his squad in a wide arc, staying out of sight. He studied the turrets, noting the gaps in their coverage. "We need a distraction," Jake said, glancing at Lyra. She nodded, pulling a small energy grenade from her pack. "This'll do the trick." Jake positioned the team carefully, then signaled Lyra. She lobbed the grenade toward the far side of the camp. It detonated with a flash, sending Zorak's squad scrambling toward the noise. "Move," Jake hissed, leading his team into the camp. Inside the perimeter, they found the beacon, a glowing device secured within a force field. Jake quickly scanned the area, finding the control panel. "It's encrypted," Krennic said, their voice tense. "I'll need a minute to bypass it." "You've got 30 seconds," Jake replied, keeping an eye on the jungle. Zorak's roar echoed through the trees as he realized the deception. "They're here. Stop them." Lyra and Raxar took up defensive positions, firing at the approaching squad. Jake moved to cover Krennic's, his heart pounding as the turrets reactivated. "Almost there," Krennic said, their claws dancing over the controls. Jake fired at an advancing Cadet, barely dodging a plasma blast. "Hurry up." With a final click, the force field dropped, and Krennic grabbed the beacon. "Got it. Run," Jake shouted, leading the team into the jungle. The chase was brutal. Zorak's team pursued them relentlessly, using drones and tracking devices to close the gap. Jake's squad fought back, but their energy was waning. As they reached the extraction point, Zorak himself appeared, his massive frame blocking their path. "You think you can steal my victory?" he growled, his voice like thunder. Jake stepped forward, his weapon raised. "It's not your victory, Zorak. You don't own this place." Zorak snarled and lunged at Jake. The two clashed, Zorak's raw strength meeting Jake's quick reflexes. Jake dodged a crushing blow and struck back, using his smaller size to his advantage. Lyra and Raxar joined the fight, forcing Zorak to retreat. In the chaos, Krennic darted past him, securing the beacon at the extraction point. The simulation ended with a blinding flash, and the cadets were teleported back to the arena. Commander Threx reviewed the results with his usual stoicism. "Squad Carter. Successful. Your ability to adapt and strategize has been noted." Jake glanced at Zorak, whose rage was barely contained. He knew this wouldn't be the last time they clashed. As the cadets dispersed, Lyra patted Jake on the shoulder. "That was impressive." Jake shook his head. "We survived. That's all that matters." But deep down, he felt something shift. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was leading. And it was only making him a bigger threat in the eyes of those who wanted to see him fail. The final reckoning. The academy was quieter than usual as the cadets prepared for the final challenge. The air was thick with anticipation, fear, and something unspoken, a growing respect for the underdog who had defied expectations. Jake Carter had gone from being overlooked to standing at the center of attention, and not all of it was positive. Lyra found Jake staring at the holographic leaderboard in the training hall. His name, once near the bottom, was now in the top 5. Zorak's name loomed just above him, and that gap felt like a chasm. "You've got one last chance to prove them wrong," Lyra said, leaning against the console. Jake's jaw tightened. "It's not just about proving them wrong. It's about showing them I belong here." "You've already done that," she said, her tone softer. "Now you just need to finish it." Before Jake could reply, the speakers crackled, and Commander Threx's voice filled the hall. "Cadets, report to the simulation chamber for your final challenge." The cadets assembled in the chamber, their faces grim but determined. Zorak stood at the front, his red eyes glinting with confidence. He glanced back at Jake, his smirk daring him to try. Commander Threx stepped forward, his presence as imposing as ever. "This is your final test. It will push you to your limits. Only one squad will emerge victorious, and only the top-performing cadet will receive the Commander's Star, a distinction of unparalleled honor." The simulation chamber transformed, creating a vast, futuristic battlefield. Skyscrapers rose high into a darkened sky, their neon lights flickering. The air buzzed with energy as drones swarmed overhead, and automated defenses loomed around every corner. The objective appeared on their wrist displays. "Secure the power core and hold it for 15 minutes." Jake's heart raced. This wasn't just a survival mission. It was a battle for dominance. Jake's squad formed quickly. Lyra, Raxar, and, surprisingly, Krennic. Despite past betrayals, Jake decided to give the insectoid cadet one last chance. "You've got something to prove," Jake said to Krenix. "Don't make me regret this." Krenix nodded, their mandibles clicking nervously. "I won't." The simulation began, and chaos erupted instantly. Squads scattered, each rushing to find the power core. Zorek's team moved like a juggernaut, smashing through defenses and leaving destruction in their wake. Jake's squad took a more tactical approach, navigating the battlefield with precision. They avoided unnecessary confrontations, using stealth and strategy to stay ahead. When they reached the core, it was heavily guarded by automated turrets and drones. Jake analyzed the defenses quickly. "Lyra, take out the turrets. Raxar, cover her. Krenix, work on disabling the drones. I'll handle the core." The team moved like a well-oiled machine. Lyra's precision strikes took down the turrets. Raxar's sheer strength cleared a path, and Krenix's technical skills neutralized the drones. Jake approached the core, his heart pounding. It was massive, pulsing with energy, and surrounded by a complex locking mechanism. "I've got this," Jake said, setting to work. As Jake worked on unlocking the core, Zorek's squad arrived, their presence announced by the deafening roar of plasma fire. "Carter," Zorek bellowed, his voice echoing across the battlefield. "Step aside and let the real cadets handle this." Jake didn't look up. "You're too late, Zorek. Go find another victory to steal." Zorek's roar of fury was the only warning before he charged. The battle was fierce. Lyra and Raxar held off Zorek's squad with everything they had, while Krenix scrambled to keep their defenses active. Jake focused on the core, his hands moving faster than ever as he bypassed its intricate locks. "You can't win, Carter," Zorek shouted, his voice filled with rage. "You don't have what it takes." Jake finally looked up, meeting Zorek's gaze with unwavering determination. "I've got something you don't, Zorek. A team that believes in me." With a final click, the core unlocked, its energy surging into Jake's wrist device. "Core secured," Jake shouted. "Fall back to the extraction point." The next 15 minutes felt like an eternity. Jake's squad fought off relentless attacks from rival teams, their bond growing stronger with every challenge. Zorek, however, was relentless. He refused to accept defeat, throwing everything he had at Jake. "You're not better than me," Zorek snarled, engaging Jake in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Jake ducked under a wild swing, countering with a quick strike to Zorek's side. "This isn't about being better," Jake said through gritted teeth. "It's about proving I deserve to be here." The fight ended when Lyra tackled Zorek, pinning him long enough for Jake to secure the final objective. When the simulation ended, the arena fell silent. Commander Threx stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the exhausted cadets. "Squad Carter, victorious," Threx announced. "And the commander's star is awarded to Cadet Jake Carter for his exceptional leadership, strategy, and resilience." The room erupted into applause, though Zorek's glare burned like a laser.